Welcome to Cats and Rats podcast, covering your Florida Panthers.
Hey everyone, welcome to our Cats and Rats podcast, episode number 10. I'm your host, Kirby Lupo, alongside my co-hosts, Nick Levine and Cody Stevens. Before I throw to my co-hosts here, we finally did it. We slayed the demons. We beat Big Brother. All the analogies in the world that you have out there right now. The Florida Panthers defeat the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games. And before I go over to Nick and Cody here, I want to share a tweet that I put out there. So I know some of our podcast listeners are not on the Twitter X platform, but I just wanted to share and encompass my emotions of being a lifelong Panther fan and finally getting over this mental hurdle, this hump of beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in a playoff series the third time. We have now faced them in the playoffs many years, not ever facing them, which I kind of indicate in my tweet here, but here it is. The Florida Panthers, I've been an OG fan since 1993. Too many years of darkness and despair. Through those lean years, the thought of being the Tampa Bay Lightning in a playoff series never even crossed my mind because we were never a good team. When they were a good team, we weren't in the playoffs. And when they weren't in the playoffs, sometimes we might have been in the playoffs by happenstance or weren't in the playoffs at the same time as well. So again, it just, our past never kind of crossed. So it never kind of crossed my mind, and always hearing those, little brother analogies, and Tampa Bay Lightning having a good program through the years as well. And I even harken back to when I was in the building with Martin St. Louis, 2004 Stanley Cup Final, Game 6 double overtime goal against the Calgary Flames. Martin St. Louis walked by me and kind of nodded at me. Didn't have a Panther hat on or anything like that. But yeah, those moments just kind of hurt. Thinking how far away we were from those moments of being in a Stanley Cup final like the Lightning were in 2004. And I said, it finally happened, a playoff matchup with the Lightning in 2021. That game one, I'll always remember. And I know Cody and Nick, you were talking to me off the air for that unmatched playoff physicality, also followed by that sheer heartbreak of Braden Point kind of breaking our hearts in that game one. But it was a great series, even though we came up short. And then, of course, the following year, the rematch, the Panthers now being the favorite, even though they had home ice the first time. We had so much confidence going into that series, and then just utter disappointment and embarrassment of getting swept by the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then finally, to now, I question internally if we'd ever get over that hump, over that hurdle. That's the Tampa Bay Lightning. Well, finally, on April 29th, 2024, the Florida Panthers clinically eliminated the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games. As I said, demons slayed. The little brother to me, the crap is over, but there's bigger goals ahead, gentlemen. Whoever wants to start here first. I know, Nick, you were at the rink. Cody, you've been alongside me on all of these post-game spaces. Just kind of share your emotions, feelings, and thoughts with me with the Panthers finally getting over and past the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Go with the guy in the building first.
Mr. Levine.
I said this on our post-game spaces after game 2, and I remember always thinking to myself, because, when your team's not in the playoffs, right, you're watching other teams, right, and you're seeing all these other teams go in these runs, and even if maybe it's not even runs, it's just them winning around. Like I saw Columbus win around, you see Nashville go on a run, you see Winnipeg go on a run a couple years ago, St. Louis go on that run. And you're seeing all the big moments, these big time goals, right? The crowd's going nuts, and I kind of always wondered if the Panthers would ever have that. Like I said this on Spaces, like, just want to be in attendance for a home playoff overtime goal, and we've gotten to see so many over the last 2 years, and just kind of everything I saw, like, watching the playoffs over the years, and now seeing my team kind of do that same thing that I kind of longed for my team. It's been incredible. And then the crowd, obviously, as you said, Kirby, I was there, and the crowd has just gotten so much better each of the last couple of years, especially in the playoffs, right? Like, even after, like, there were times and criticisms about, the Panthers crowd and like how the crowd would react, like whenever we allowed a goal, right? Well, Sergei Bobrovsky makes a big save and he allows a goal, right? And the crowd doesn't stop. The crowd keeps going. And just a great testament to the progress the Panthers have made, and just so many great memories and moments, and unbelievable, just an unbelievable atmosphere, and it's improved so much. It feels like a genuine, real playoff credit is the atmosphere and the experience I had at these games over the last, just not this year, but over the last year and a half has been unbelievable.
And Cody, I think we need Nick back in the tunnel as the players are coming out because he was there for game 5, dapping up all the players. So I think we need to get Nick down there for every game now.
Yeah.
So
You can make it
gotta
work,
do it.
Kirby. I'll be there.
Mr.
I
John
mean-
Acosta, paging Mr. John Acosta.
I mean,
Oh,
but
Cody.
when it comes to emotions with this series right here, I mean, for years and years and years, I mean, I watched Tampa Bay get franchise player after franchise player, playoff run after playoff run. Like I grew up like on the back half of like, like Cavalier and St. Louis, right?
Yep.
And they started their rebuild right around the same time we did. Right when they got like after the later years after St. Louis, after the Cavalier
They
went
kind of
away.
got gifted Stamkos there.
Yeah,
First overall.
but then when they got Hedman
Hmm.
and then
Who was slow to develop.
yeah, and then Kucherov was I think a third round pick.
Something like that.
Point
Yeah.
was a mid round pick too, and just like watching them develop these guys, and I was jealous of them for years. I mean, how can you not? We could barely develop our first round picks, and they were developing third and fourth and fifth round picks.
It's like, Cody, how can you hate them when it's not a rivalry because we never match up to them? And when we do, we just get embarrassed in regular season games. And when you look at standings year after year, it's really hard to get a hate on for your cross-state rival when it's like you don't even cross paths when it matters, you know? And that's not till recent years now.
And for there were a couple of years there where like we would start off the year a back-to-back versus Tampa, like one in Tampa, one in Sunrise, and
Mhm.
like those would be our Stanley Cup finals for the year because we knew we weren't going to make the playoffs. But just to finally see the growth of the organization to like kind of reach that level is nothing short of like amazing. Because after 2021, it stung, but I wasn't like in despair because I knew finally something's changing with the Panthers. 2022, different story. I couldn't watch a hockey game until like the cup final after that. I just couldn't do it.
I couldn't believe Cody told me that off air earlier today. Because I had people in our community. That was the first year when we were starting up this post-game spaces and community, and Cody was kind of with us a little bit at that point. And I didn't know Cody as well then, but I couldn't believe that Cody told me that because Alex was messaging me after every game when Tampa was playing the Rangers, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, Colorado's a machine right now. I think they are going to take this." And if they play Tampa, like, I think Colorado has this. So it was other people drawing me back into it, Cody, because I was a little dejected after that too. And I needed a couple days, but it was everyone, again, within our community pulling me back to, watching hockey where sometimes, I just want to crawl into a hole and not watch any more hockey for the rest of the spring. But it's surprising that you say that because you watch a lot of hockey, Cody.
Yeah, it was just that one was just the most embarrassing, deflating, because you thought you were going in the right direction. Turns out it was all mirage. And luckily, our GM saw what was happening, made the biggest move in recent memory, and now we're back on the right trajectory again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And guys, we last left off after game 2. So after I give a couple numbers here, I kind of want you guys just to kind of analyze and break down games 3, games 4, games 5. I was away for game 4, so I got a different perception and read than you guys watching it with a fresh pair of eyes after the fact, not live. So I really want you guys to break, but I did watch game 4, but I want you guys to break that down. But I want to share some numbers here first. And Cody, you helping me host our preview spaces show, we broke down these regular season numbers, and I wanted to go back to them after this playoff series to see where they compared and contrasted. So again, regular season 5v5 numbers. The goal differential for the Panthers in the regular season was plus 35. Tampa Bay was minus 21. In the playoffs, Florida was plus 5 against the Lightning. The Lightning were minus 5. So that held true, guys. We said 5-on-5 was going to be key for the Panthers. The next one, power play, 23.5% during the regular season by the Panthers. We were, top 5, top 8 all year there. The Lightning were first at 28.7. In the playoffs, The Panthers were 23%, 3 for 13. The Lightning, only 20%. We almost we shaved off over 8% off of their power play numbers. They were 4 for 20. They got 7 more chances than us on the power play. That was a big number. Penalty kill, we were 82.5 during the regular season, the Lightning 83.1. In the playoffs, just a slight decrease for the Panthers here. This is one of the categories you'll see from the regular season number to their playoff numbers. 80%, just a couple percentages off. Tampa Bay's penalty kill, though, was only 77%. So another win for the Panthers. And finally, the last win for the Panthers, goals per game, 3.23 during the regular season. The Lightning were 3.48. They were above the Panthers. Well, in the playoffs, the Panthers were an even 4 goals per game. The Tampa Bay Lightning were 2.80. So not only did the Panthers get to Vasilevsky in this series, win the special teams battle, but they also won the offensive battle. And we thought that would be the case, gentlemen, when it was 5-on-5. Nick, what do you have to break down with those numbers or things that you saw as the series went along?
Yeah. Well, I first want to start off by saying that like a lot of those numbers really, and you could say this for a number of statistics, like whether it be Bob's save percentage or whatever, kind of boosted by that game 4, right? All those all those other statistics really, that they kind of, you know, in those games, and I know obviously we have to count game 4, but if you don't count game 4, the Panthers were phenomenal. And you know, you take a look at a guy like, for example, Nikita Kucherov, Kirby, 7 points in 5 games. Well, if you're a fan of another team, you're on the outside looking in on this series, like, oh, Kucherov still at 7 points in 5 games. But the Panthers did a phenomenal job at shutting him down.
What grade do you guys give him? I give him a C- at
like,
best.
And here's the thing, like, when you take a look at some of those assists, like I think one of them was the Stamkos one at the end of game 1, right? When there's 8 seconds left and there's not really anything,
Garbage time.
Garbage time, basically, right? And that's the biggest story to me is what Nikita, and obviously Steven Stamkos was terrific, but the main point here, Kirby, was what the Panthers were fighting for in the final days was home ice advantage. And I have just their home statistics right here. They played 3 home games. They were 3-0, scored 12 goals, allowed 5. So that's an average of 4 goals per game and allowing 1.67 goals per game. The penalty kill was at 81.8%, power play at 18%, and shots per game, 34.7, shots allowed per game were 24.7. And the one thing that we have struggled with throughout majority of the last contending window was faceoffs. The Panthers were 55%. So when you take a look,
that's better than our regular season numbers, Nick, at 51.3. And I think you mentioned shots on goal allowed. The Panthers were at 27.8, which was 3rd in the NHL during the regular season.
So we took advantage of home ice, right? Like, this is like the Panthers wanted that home ice. They got it. They took full advantage of it. And Kirby, if you remember last year in the playoffs, when we were going into this Carolina and Toronto series, I'm like, just keep the face-offs at around 42 to 45%, right? Don't have it completely be lopsided or else, you know, like it loses momentum, right? 55%, Kirby. I mean, it's incredible. All facets of our game, like defending 1 goal leads, like that 3rd period in game 5, up until the Barkov goal, that was beautiful. Like,
they just let the clock run out.
Yeah. Like there was I think that clock ran for 10 minutes up until until the Barkov goal happened. Very long time.
Close to there. Yep.
So it was just, I can't say enough about what they did to shut down their top players in Kucherov and Point. But again, I think when you take a look at the other side, Vasilevsky was still terrific. Victor Hedman, who some people said he was washed, he looked pretty good to me.
I have no idea why people even came up with that narrative.
He got so good as the series went along into games 3,
was
games 4,
unbelievable.
games 5.
And then Steven Stamkos was the best player on the ice for Tampa. And, you know, then we obviously have Alexander Barkov kind of had his playoff coming out party a little bit last year against Carolina. But, you know, Alexander Barkov was a dominant. There were some games where he was okay, pretty good, but games 1 and game 5, Alexander Barkov was completely dominant. He came through when we needed him most. And congratulations on his first career celly. Oh my gosh. Like,
Oh,
I'd
I
never
saw
seen
some of the
this.
comments on Instagram that did bother me. They're like, "Oh, he's selling now. Now I have no problems with Barkov." I'm like, "You should never have problems with Barkov
I
to start
just,
with."
but you
But
know,
fans want that so bad out of him. The ones
but
that that aren't Nick
he
Levine
selling
and
on
Cody
both
Stevens.
goals. So, but Alexander Barkov was a point per game in this series. He shut down Nikita Kucherov, and shout out to Anton Lundell, who was just unbelievable. 4 points
Well,
in 5 games this series, and
we'll get into my X factors and our spotlight players because Nick wasn't here for the last podcast, so he's going to grade me and Cody how we did. So that's what we're going to do here in our next segment a little bit later.
And there's a guy we're gonna have to mention here
Okay.
that you guys even haven't mentioned because he's not in our top 5. Hell, he wasn't even honorable mention.
But before that, Cody, I want you to break down games 3, 4, and 5 as well. But go ahead with that.
I mean, we'll get more into him later, but we can't talk about the series without Carter Verhaeghe.
Yeah, it's funny how we seem to not mention his name as we go through names. It's just like,
Yeah,
oh, Carter
and
Verhaeghe, just doing Carter Verhaeghe.
And another thing, Kachuk had 9 points at 5 games. I didn't think he was. I thought he was better last year. I mean, like,
but Matthew Kachuk's always going to get recognition when he has points on the board. I think with us guys, we don't always mention that because they're like, okay, yeah, he was doing the little things. He collects points almost in his sleep. But he's
right.
always going to get that recognition from the fan base. But like Cody just mentioned, let's talk Carter Verhaeghe. I know some fans obviously are, and he scores in that game 5 to get us going there, which was a huge goal. But when you start talking Barkov and Kachuk, and then obviously Bobrovsky earlier in the series, you're going to forget names as you go along. And I think it's like Carter Verhaeghe just finds a way just to slide in the back door there. Reinhart had a very quiet series statistically. What if Reinhart has a loud series in the second round? Verhaeghe's just going to sneak in the back door there again and come up with those clutch big time moments.
Just like
Cody.
how he won game 1. But games 3, 4, for game 3, like I said, in the post game spaces, that's where I expected Tampa's best. But it never really came to fruition. They got their first lead of the series in that game, but Florida just stayed with it and got the lead right back and never looked back.
Mm-hmm.
Just once again another game of just their defense just could not handle our forecheck the entire series. They struggled with it mightily. They tried to combat it with the stretch passes from like their own goal line to their offensive zone blue line, which worked in some cases, but Florida did a pretty good job in limiting those passes. But game 4, a lot of people were frustrated after game 4.
I wasn't, Cody. I watched that game again on replay. The first 10 minutes or so till I believe was it the Kulikov penalty. I was really happy with the Panthers.
And here's the thing: in a game where a lot of people weren't happy with, that was a 1-goal game midway through the third. That game was still within reach for the Panthers.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys pull Bob after 3 goals? I pull him after if he gives up the 4.
If it was 4-0, yes.
That's when
but because we scored that other goal, and then again, I'm just saying, I think Sergei Bobrovsky and net gives us the best chance to win, and I don't view it as very close. I think you leave him in. He's earned that, and I think he should.
I'm looking at a certain couple people. Anthony Stolarz will not start a game this postseason unless Sergei Bobrovsky is injured.
Why are we seeing tweets out there?
I have no
social
idea.
Media interaction on this.
There has not been one Stanley Cup team who has willingly, and I mean willingly, they had a rotation. No Stanley Cup team, you can name me whatever, has willingly used more than one goalie. They stick with one. You could say the Knights last year, but all their goalies got hurt.
Brossois got hurt, and then you remember it with Colorado, Francouz got hurt, or Kemper got hurt, and Francouz had to come in.
Yeah, besides that has never happened.
Yeah.
It does not work. I can't stand it when teams do it, and I will never understand why they do it. But
there's another team that I hope is trying to figure that out right now.
One team. Oh yeah,
there's one team
that could play us in the next round. Yeah, do that. You guys do that.
Yeah, we'll get into them in a little bit here, but we got to still go through our breakdown and stuff. Yeah. I want you guys to continue talking about the final games here, but I'll just throw something out there: the Jon Cooper versus Paul Maurice matchup. How did that kind of?
I didn't think it was as prevalent as people thought it was going to be.
I agree.
Just because, well, I mean, like Maurice last year with the depth, Cooper's hands were pretty much tied with his depth, especially on the forward front. Uh, like, like in years past, they definitely would have made some adjustments. I mean, like I said in the last in the preview, they made a lot, and I mean a lot of defensive adjustments back there. They tried 11-7. They Herbix came out. They put in Crozier. They threw in Sergachev for Game 4 when they.
I like the Sergachev move. I was shocked to see it on my phone when I was looking for updates while the game was going on, but I watched him fairly closely in Game 4, but especially in Game 5. I think it was a good move for them. I'm surprised that it kind of worked out as well as it did, but I don't think he was exposed out there on the ice, and they needed help, Cody, back there. You have been
Yep.
the first person in the Panthers community out there on Twitter to say this is not the same Tampa Bay team, and you mentioned it at first because of that defense. They've
And
lost all the depth through the years with
There-
McDonough, Shen, and on down the
even
list.
a guy like David Savard, like,
Mhm.
and they had last year they had Ian Cole still, but like again, you take a look at guys like Eric Chernak, right? Like
Who's
Sergachev
fallen
goes
off a
down,
cliff.
right? Sergachev
Well,
goes
he's
down.
being asked to do too much
Yeah,
with
he's being
Sergachev.
asked to do too much, but he went from being number 4 behind Hedman, Sergachev, McDonough to having to jump in as the number 2 defenseman pretty much. And when you take a look at, I agree with Cody that it wasn't too prevalent. I thought it would be more prevalent, the coaching matchup, but I'll give Tampa Bay credit for a couple things. Number one, you can't say they didn't work or compete because they did. They did.
Well,
And there were
Stamkos
times
did.
in this series that, for example,
I think there was individuals that pulled up those moments for their
well,
team
I'll say
around them.
this, like in game 2,
Hagel, Isamont, Stamkos,
When
then
we-
later on Hedman. Obviously, Vasilevsky was there for most of the
By
series,
the
but
way,
it was
when we went up-
individuals. It
when
was
we went
individuals.
up in game 2, in 2-0, Tampa Bay, they could have just packed it up and said, yeah, that's pretty much it. They didn't. I give them credit.
They're not going to do that. They
But-
weren't.
But
They're a
I give
professional
them
team,
credit.
but also
I
they
give
were
them
they were
credit for
missed.
that.
They were also Mr. Second period for most of that series.
And
you know?
the
That's
reason
where
why
they
I
showed
just
up was
again,
just
I
going into
just
the
think, personnel, the team with the better personnel came out on top of this series, and that was
for
Yeah.
60
pretty
minutes.
much it. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
keep it
Like,
5-on-5.
you take a look 5-on-5 and everything, right? And it's not so much about, oh, well, 7 more power plays, right? Like, when they didn't score on those power plays, but it disrupts the flow of a game and it takes away time that we could be
I
going.
mean,
that
And
we
they
could-
didn't have the confidence, guys, because they weren't building it off their power play.
Yeah,
Or
and
there was big Vasi saves, but it wasn't one
But
after another
the-
after another
the
after
biggest
another.
problem on their power play was the guy who was leading it throughout the entire season, the Art Ross winner, was horrible. And
Yep.
I saw some comments saying, "Oh, 7 points in 5 games isn't bad." Did you even watch this series?
Good point.
Like, there isn't a Lightning fan alive that can tell me, "Oh, Kucherov played good." You know he didn't. He was horrible. And
he
when
got
Coop-
frustrated very early too.
and when Cooper and I was waiting to see the injury list, and guess what? His name wasn't on it.
No, it wasn't.
So the Panthers just literally frustrated the guy who has killed them for years. And it just to a point.
I want to give credit to the first pairing of Ekblad and Gustav Forsling, but also to that first line that was usually Barkov, Tarasenko, Reinhardt of shutting down Kucherov. I'm going to give a shout out to my boy Money Monter. He shut down Braden Point. Every time Braden Point had a chance in the bumper in the slot, Brandon Montour was down there in the blue paint, for everyone that doesn't think he plays defense, tying up Braden Point in front of the net so Bob could cover the puck or battle in front. Every situation, he was there on Braden Point pretty much. And a lot of these are either 5-on-5. Some of them are the power play when maybe Brandon Montour's on at the end of the penalty kill. But that first unit of Forsling and Ekblad, along with Barkov, shutting down Kucherov, and also had Stenlin in there on the penalty kill guys for Kucherov.
Yeah.
But Montour
Yeah.
mainly, and also Mikkola, but shutting down that point line when they had those two lines kind of separated and not stacked, and they did a good job on that. So that wasn't, and then you just got Stamkos,
Yeah.
getting off on a power play goal or
Right.
maybe a chance here or there. But hey, if you could shut down Point and Kucherov, and then Stamkos is the third or fourth option, you got to live with that at this point if you're the
Yeah.
Panthers.
like during the spaces, we had someone say, Or do you guys think they should game plan for Stamkos? No. At this point with that team, you're gonna have to let somebody beat you. My pick would be Steven Stamkos to beat me, it would be him because I already know he's only gonna do it on the power play. 5-on-5, he had that one goal, but I mean, really nothing else besides him standing in that spot. But game 4, that was the most desperate I've ever seen the Lightning.
Right.
But and if we're being real here, Bob probably that was Bob's worst game of the series too. Had a couple that I think he wishes he could have had back. But in the end, the Panthers gave me confidence, especially when they tried to come back in the second period. That showed me they were still in it. They weren't going to slide down and die. Let Tampa have this one, and went back home, handled business.
Yeah, gentlemen, before we kind of get into our next segment here, anything else to wrap there on what we kind of saw here over the last few games and the Panthers closing out in 5?
I just want to say that the Panthers forward depth really was tested in this series, and big contentious, debate, well, not debate, a part of last year was the lack of depth overall, but especially up front. And, you had a guy like Kevin Stenlund come in on $1 million, and he's playing 13, 14, 15 minutes against the other team's top 6. Key penalty kill, an unbelievable play to set up Rodriguez. This guy's he's got size, he's got some speed, he's got some skill, he has chemistry with some guys on there. And then obviously Steven Lorentz and Kyle Opozo, and obviously Nick Cousins. There's just a bunch of guys, the bottom 6 guys, they were making an impact. And it wasn't every game, right? For game 3, it was that 4th line. For game 5, Stenlund and that. I know they switched it up with Tarasenko there, but Stenlund really showed up and Rodriguez got a goal, right? So it's the bottom 6 coming through with key contributions that, it is going to be the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, a good point. And I want to give a shout out to Dmitry Kulikov. I think he was arguably a top 3 defenseman for us in this series. And that's crazy to say.
Gotta get my boy
you've got OEL up there. I got him a little lower, but everyone has different rankings of how our defense played. We're going to get into one name in particular, our number 1 guy in the next segment. But just a shout out to those depth guys there, Cody, that Nick mentioned up front, and then Kulikov on the back end with OEL too.
And I really got to get this off my chest because I've seen it everywhere, and it's driving me up a wall. Yep. Tampa, you did not lose because the refs weren't on your side. You had 7 more power plays, including a double minor. You got outplayed. You got outskilled. You got beat at your own game that you've been beating people at for years. You just cry me a river. You did not lose because of the refs. You lost because you guys are not the same team anymore.
Yeah, and it's going to be very hard for them to have another early exit this spring. Last year it was to Toronto. I think this one's going to sting even more for Tampa Bay Lightning fans because it's a result of losing to the Florida Panthers for the first time in the playoffs in their franchise history. Guys, before we start with our next segment here, I just want to let everyone know Panthers Fever is here. Are you geared up? CanesWear in Davie is the place for all your Florida Panthers needs. They have the latest gear for our favorite NHL team. Jerseys, polos, t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. CanesWear has you covered. Stop by their store in Davie or at pantherswear.com. Again, that's pantherswear, WEAR.com for all your Panthers gear. And now we're going to kind of break down mine and Cody's predictions that we made prior to the series. Nick wasn't along with us for that episode, but he's going to kind of grade and mark us on how we did. And I'm going to add here, I did this last year on my former podcast, and I would say this year's version, I might give myself the worst grade from the Boston series into the Toronto Carolina one. And
are you passing on this one? Do you think
we don't really want to talk about the Vegas one? What do you mean? Am I passing on this one?
I'm just giving yourself a passing grade.
I don't think I'm going to give myself a passing grade, Cody, but I'm happy because it worked out so well for the Panthers. So that's the thing. There is maybe one Panther on this list that I wouldn't give a passing grade to. I hit number 1 out of the park. First of all, I had Matthew Tkachuk number 1. guys, that should be like, give me a lot of points on that one.
I
There,
had
having
3
him
through
number
5. All were hits.
three for five. Okay, so I'll go through mine here. Matthew Tkachuk 1, Nikita Kucherov 2. Like, I had to give this dude respect coming into this series, Cody, because
No, we don't have to.
he's up for the MVP. Now we don't have to. Braden Point 3, we respect him, but kind of that high up, he didn't do enough on the power play. He didn't do enough to be a force out there. Steven Stamkos was better than Braden Point. So right away, I hit on number 1, number 2, and number 3. I didn't. Cody, sorry to say, your boy Aaron Ekblad, he was probably our worst defenseman in this series, but we didn't need him to be much more than the 5th, 6th defenseman.
He did what he needed to do.
He did what he needed to do, but I wanted this to be a spotlight series for him, and I put him right there on the mantle. I didn't put my boy Money Monter there. I didn't put Hedman like you did, Cody. I put Aaron Ekblad there. I didn't put Gustav Forsling there. I put Aaron
Here's where I'll argue.
Yeah.
I don't think this was a series for defenseman spotlight. This did not end up being one of that series.
They kind of cancel each other out, but Brandon Montour had his moments, and Victor Hedman was probably the best defenseman on both sides of the ice.
By far.
Okay. So again, like, I wasn't even close. And everyone has Gustav Forsling in different spots because of how he shut down Kucherov. But I also don't think he was, again, everyone says Kirby, he's not going to be a difference maker and different things like that. But come playoff time, you have to be that. I think he was on Kucherov, but I don't think I would put him in the top 5. The only defenseman that would maybe make the top 5 would be Victor Hedman. And number 5, Andre Vasilevsky. I think I'm all right there, but Bob was better than him. So again, process of elimination, I probably should have had Bobrovsky there. But I thought, Cody, if this series was going to go 7, like you said along with me, there was going to be 1 or 2 Vasilevsky games. I think it was in game 2, but Bob stole his thunder, and they end up winning the game there. I believe, what was it, in overtime? So again, I give myself, I don't know, like a 1 out of 5. This is the worst I've done. C-, maybe C grade at best.
And here's where I come in. 1, 2 are both. I had Vasi 1, Kucherov 2.
Yeah, we had to put Kucherov. Like most people,
we had to show respect somewhere.
Yeah. Unless we're going to be a biased podcast, which we're not. Which, when we go on our post-game spaces, Nick, we're not like that. We are very balanced. We try to be the best that we can, and it's still not enough for our fan base. But again, if you guys are doing this list, I think you'd have Kucherov somewhere on there. So again,
100 assists and 44 goals in the season. You're not going to have him in the top 5 list.
And all the numbers that Tampa Bay has put on us in the playoffs in the past.
Insane. Like, and for you, listener, you would too, if you did this top 5 before the series started, you would have both Andre Vasilevsky and Nikita Kucherov in there. So I don't want to have any fat here. But 3 through 5, out of the ballpark. Matthew Tkachuk was my 3. I think that's the perfect spot for him, honestly.
Almost too low. Let's say 1 or 2.
I think 3, because I think
again, you could count every player on the ice, right? But like,
that's
spotlight players, we're counting guys coming into the series. If again, what was his name? Martinook on Carolina last year went off in New Jersey series. Who would have maybe had that unless you're a Martinook fan? So we're ranking kind of the better players, or maybe putting our neck out there on the line for maybe like 1 or 2 of these selections.
10 points in 5 games. That will never happen again.
Martinook, you mean, right? Yeah. So Tkachuk, that's fine. 2, 3.
Barkov, I had 4. I had Barkov 4.
Yeah, you did have him in there. I had in my honorable mention Barkov and Verhaeghe, and I'm kicking myself now. But again, I thought this series was going to go long, Cody.
I had Barkov 4, which I think is the perfect spot for him. Yeah, because he showed up games 1 and 5,
quiet in a couple other games,
but he was good defensively. So, and 5, I had Victor Hedman, which is pretty low. But considering the whole series, I think a 4 or 5 spot would have been perfect for him.
And that's the one guy that I wanted to take from your list. I had Ekblad on there, who's your boy, and then when you put Hedman on there, I was like,
I didn't think this would be a huge offensive series for Florida. For the defenseman side anyway. That's just never been the case when we play Tampa. It's never really been. It's just been like, I don't know. It's been kind of like a little bit of a wash, but they're like always their defense was doing the little things more than our defense was. But now it's different.
So I'm giving myself pretty much a 1 out of 5. If I don't give myself a point on Vasilevsky at 5, which I could, but say, just to be fair, like a 1 out of 5, and you're giving yourself 3 there, Cody?
2 or 3. If you want to say Kachuk's too low, then it's 2 out of 5. But then again,
And Barkov and Hedman, the other ones.
I think though if you ask me, I think it's 3 out of 5.
No. Cody, I think you got me there. Me and Cody had Florida in 7. A guy in Nick that doesn't make predictions. Nick, what did you have going into this series? Florida, Tampa, and what would your list have looked like?
Well, as far as who I thought was going to win this series, I thought, personally, Florida would win it just because the better, again, better
Did
depth,
you have a
better
number?
personnel.
Did you have a number?
I didn't really have a number because
He
it was
never
very
has
hard.
a number.
He has to.
It was very hard for me to gauge how this series was going.
Well, you
to
think
go,
it was
right?
easy for me or Cody to
No,
gauge?
I had no clue. My X factor, obviously, it's a little different in hindsight,
Okay,
but
not X factor yet. Those top 5, like, would you have had a combination of those guys? Was there a
number
guy
one,
on there
I
that you would have?
think I had told you this when we were talking. Maybe even a week back, Kirby. I said this might have to be an Alexander Barkov series, so I definitely would have had him on there, and he had 1 or 2. He had 2 dominant games, right?
Because
And
me and
that's what we
Cody,
needed.
were not on that at all. That it was going to be an Alexander Barkov
He
series.
had 2 dominant games, and those were huge. None of you had the best player in the series.
Carter Verhaeghe.
You didn't have him in the top 5.
Bobrovsky.
Or Sergei Bobrovsky, which really did surprise me because I thought, coming into this.
I thought the power plays would kind of bring.
I'll say this,
and his numbers aren't like sparkling.
For me, I would have definitely had Kucherov and Vasilevsky. Absolutely, because when we talked about what was our concerns heading into the series, we said
Those were the 2
Vasilevsky stealing this series and the power play, which would entail Nikita Kucherov.
But none of you would have had Stamkos. I didn't have him.
No.
I don't think I would have had Stamkos. I might.
He could be on this list. He could be on this top 5 list.
I'm going to be honest. I might not have even had Hedman, to be completely fair.
Oh, that's defense guy. I couldn't leave off him.
I don't think I would have put in.
It was
Victor
too many
Hedman.
guys. It was too many guys to have Hedman.
I think for me, I
Especially
would have done probably Vazzy and Bob, then Kucherov and Kachuk, and then for me, Barkov probably would have been 5 there.
Oh, wow. Would he have had this list? 2 goalies in this series?
He wouldn't have. He wouldn't have.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's giving himself a real good pass.
Going too crazy, but we can all admit here, the correct list: Carter Verhaeghe at 1.
Okay.
Sergei Bobrovsky at 2. Damn, we're gonna have a lot of Panthers here.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think
Kachuk's got to be up there.
I think Nico Mikkola had a hell of a series. I know Kirby thinks Montour was the best defenseman. I think it was Mikkola. For me, he's definitely got to be a top 5 guy this series.
That's very bold. We're gonna get into X factors here.
I don't even think he makes the top 7.
No, for the Panthers, not on both sides. For Panthers,
I'm combining both sides.
Oh, for me, he's a top 5 Panther, Mikkola. I wouldn't say both sides.
That's what I'm saying. Not both
Vasilevsky, Hedman, and Stamkos.
We can argue. We can argue this like top 5 Panthers. So we have what? Verhaeghe, Bob, Kachuk, Barkov, and then you would have Mikkola 5.
Who are we missing? So wait, Verhaeghe, Kachuk,
Verhaeghe 1, Bob 2, Kachuk 3, Barkov 4. I put Reinhardt before I put Mikkola.
I put Montour before
Montour.
Montour's leading the team in ice time, and we had a better power play. You guys said the power play is not good with Montour out there.
Yeah, but the power play was good, but it wasn't because of Montour. Montour struggled on the power play.
For me, I think for me it would have been Mikkola 5 and then Montour 6. You could swap them and it wouldn't make a difference to me. I just really like.
If you ask me, Montour was best 5-on-5 this series. I don't think power play was at his best. He was. There were points.
We don't always go by the charts, but there was 2 games he was number 1 back to back.
I know, but
number 1.
But there were points where he was bobbling the puck, losing it out the zone.
Not bad.
But
what about all his defensive plays that I talked about?
I want to defend Brandon Montour real quick because Braden Point came in 1-on-1 with speed, and Brandon Montour defended him beautifully. I think it was in game 1, and it was just
a couple bad penalties by Montour. That's the only thing he did bad in the series.
A lot of people like to talk about Montour, how he can't keep the puck in, but yet when he does keep the puck in and he jumps in the air. Well, I mean, when he jumps in the air I think in game 1 to keep the puck in. Nobody says a word about that.
Who was the defenseman on our team that initiated all the rushes when the games were tight? There was no scoring going on.
And wasn't he the one?
He had a crossbar. He had Vasilevsky made 3 huge blockers.
Wasn't he the one driving the net on the Rodriguez goal? Took away that guy.
Yes.
He didn't drive the net. He
initiated into the rush.
He initiated, but then dropped back.
And that's a smart play defensively to do that, Cody. I mean, he wouldn't have done that last year.
I mean, yeah, because new time and place.
Yep.
But like to a point, I need him better on the power play.
Yeah, but you're asking a lot out of again.
How am I
I'm going to be honest.
He's the power play quarterback. That's not asking a lot.
I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't think he was terrible. He wasn't great on the power play, but
okay,
you know, I think
I'll agree with you guys.
I think that we're trying to there was a couple times where that bumper pass was there and they didn't connect on it. So let's
again. Reinhart had a quiet series.
Blame goes all around when we're losing the draw. So many power play draws, offensive zone draws,
and everyone that wants to start our second power play unit giving up goals the other way, shorthanded. Again, having Brandon Montour out there and Aaron Ekblad, Barkov, it matters because they are helping defensively.
I will say this though, if Reinhart had a quiet series, I'll take 3 goals if that's quiet for him.
I think it was very quiet.
My grade for you guys, do you want me to grade him based off how it panned out or how I think?
I mean, how it panned out, obviously.
Well, I mean, how it panned out. I mean, I think he got that.
Well, let's say the X factors. My X factor was Aaron Ekblad. Kirby's was Anton Lundell. He had me beat there.
Yeah, and I also said I added a little caveat that the first pairing had to be impactful. Maybe a plus there too with Forsling's defensive work on Kucherov, but I did say Lundell was my number 1.
Well, Lundell had a heck of a series, and he got a lot of heat, from our fan base.
Maybe not as good as the Toronto series, gentlemen.
No, I think he was
up there.
Again, you take a look the cycle game and him below the hash marks, even when before Bennett got hurt when he was a low Starine, and Lundell's grinding below the goal line, right? And I don't think we can understate that.
And he didn't make mistakes. He didn't make mistakes, which was big in this series.
He was matched up with Braden Point for the whole third period in Game 5. I don't think we can understate. I don't think we can understate that, right? Now, obviously, Reinhart and Losterinen with him, right? And I thought again, Reinhart had a quiet series, but defensively, especially in that Game 5, he was.
Yes, that was Reinhart's best game. Game 1 and Game 5. The other games, I thought Reinhart was
that's for me Barkov
non-existent.
I think that was Barkov's best.
Barkov a little bit more, and Tarasenko was good early, and then he kind of faded. But again, he's kind of the third guy on that first line, so I'm not going to grade him like I would grade Reinhart and Barkov.
But Tarasenko continues to do all the little things right. He got physical when he needed to. He back checked when he needed to.
Yeah,
that's all we need from him.
And there was a leading to the Rodriguez goal. That's Tarasenko on the half wall taking the hit to make the play, and it allowed Stenlund to pick up the puck.
And speaking of Rodriguez, everyone told me in DMs, all my mentions, Erod Kirby, isn't he very underwhelming? I was like, maybe he was our most underwhelming forward, but that's saying a lot for all the guys that bring it during the whole series. And Erod's best play was at the end of the series in Game 4 and especially in Game 5, and he was rewarded with that goal. So if he was our most underwhelming forward of the 12, 13 options that we had, including a Poso who played quite well too, that says something.
Shout out Steven Lorentz, game 3.
Yeah, Lorentz.
Shout out Nick Cousins,
Nick Cousins was good early. People didn't like him late, Nick, but I thought Nick Cousins was good
the
early.
The fourth line did what they needed to do. Because Game 3 was the fourth line game because Tyler Mott had that goal to make it 2-1 for Tampa, and then our fourth line responds, creating the Montour goal. That was all work by Cousins, Lorentz, and Okposo.
Yeah, how long were they in the zone before that goal happened? Half a minute, 35 seconds?
They were heading in there for quite a bit.
Yeah, so, again, that's something we didn't really, I don't think we got a shift anywhere close to that from our fourth line last year in the playoffs.
That's how we're going to score with a Montour bomb, with an Ek blast, with Forsling being sneaky, getting in the slot area, and maybe unleashing a sneaky, deceptive wrist shot, or OEL as well, sneaking shots through layers. That OEL's done this. That's how we're going to get production from the back end. Mikkola, he's just going to go coast to coast sometimes and try to get a goal that way. But that's how we're going to get goals from our defense.
He'll always terrify me when he does it.
Well, yeah, and he cleaned it up though. He really
Oh
did.
no, he
And,
has, but it still terrifies me.
But I think that's how we beat Boston early, guys.
I don't care
and I
what.
also
If
want
our
to
bottom six grinds them out and we
and,
throw it back to the point and we get some of those key goals from our defensemen.
and speaking of the defenseman, Kirby, I thought we did a really good job of getting traffic to the net. Like that seemed we were having a tough time getting to those areas.
Yep.
Remember last year against Vegas and 2 years ago against Tampa
Yep.
Bay, right? Like Vasilevsky saw every shot, right?
But
So-
again, Tampa's Bay's defense isn't what it used to be, Nick.
Exactly.
So we did a good job. I think we need to take it to another level against Boston. It ain't going to be easy.
I agree, but it's definitely Panthers are improving in certain areas. And again, the forecheck, the net front battles, I think we did an excellent job of that, on both sides of the ice this series.
So, yeah, just in closing on that, guys, before we go into our final segment here, talking the Toronto Maple Leafs and Boston Bruins a bit, Cody gets the W there. You could give him pretty much a passing grade, 2.5, 3 out of 5. I give myself like a 1 out of 5 if I'm being generous, a 2. So Cody there, I do get the X factor, I guess, over Cody. Yours was Ekblad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We're
yeah,
gonna
pretty close, but yeah, edge to Cody.
We're gonna have to come back a little bit stronger next series.
I probably would have said Sam
Yeah.
Bennett. That
Now,
would have definitely
gentlemen,
failed.
if this is Toronto, I've got some names I'm cooking up. But if it's Boston, oh, I got about 3-4 Panthers from last year that
But
did some work on Boston.
But
That
when you talk
will
about-
probably appear on my list.
I mean, when you're talking about these two teams, and I mean,
Yep.
and for those of you at home who have not watched a game of this series, please do, because if this series goes to Game 7, that would probably be the most tense Game 7, I think, in the last couple of years, because demons resurfacing for both teams. Can Toronto finally get over the hump, and can Boston get over the 3-1 series lead in Game 7, home Game 7, like they did last year?
Now, by the time everyone listens to this recording, guys, this series could be over in 6. I'm going to say the pressure is on the Leafs at home in Game 6.
Yeah.
But if they could somehow find a way to win that game, then all the pressure swings back on Boston, and all the memories of last year against Florida are there. And I know I talked with Nick earlier today off of the air about Jim Montgomery just, I don't know, not making the right messages. I think both coaches have not been great with the media and some of the things that they said. Jim Montgomery at first was kind of playing with the media there. Remember, like, oh, we got an extra day or 2 in Toronto. I don't really like this schedule. And they actually took care of business against Toronto. But Toronto is going to, if they're going to survive, guys, and win Game 6, I think they've lost their last 7 home games in the playoffs. I think
that is correct.
I think their last home game wins when they blew out Tampa.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's crazy. In the last 2, like you said, Kirby, in the last 2 years, they're 1-7. And then on the road, which is weird, even against Florida, they got a road win. They split on the road. They're 6-2. So they played 16 playoff games the last 2 years, 1-7 on home ice, 6-2 on the road. And when you really take a look at this series, it is the story of this series is special teams, right?
Yeah.
Looking at the statistics, both teams have 8 goals at even strength, right? So that's not really an issue. What is an issue is the special teams. Like I just said, Boston's power play is converting at 43%, and their penalty kill is at 94.1%. Boston, which obviously would entail Toronto's
power play hasn't been, sorry, Nick, to interrupt. Toronto's power play hasn't been that bad since the Matthews-Marner era, I believe. Like
it has, and it's at 5.9%, which is the second worst in the playoffs, only better than the LA Kings.
I would say, like, how could you lose a series with a close to 50% power play? But they did it last year.
Yeah, so, and it's just, and the penalty kill 57.1%, and I take, like, last night's game is very, like, weird for me because every time, like, the Leafs seem to have it figured out, right? Like, even in games, I'm like, okay, they got it figured out, they settled it down, and then they don't, which is weird. And I take a look at guys like, first of all, Max Domi had a heck of a game last night. I think he only lost like 1 or 2
in Game 5
faceoffs.
we're talking about
Game
there.
5. In Game 5, my apologies. And another guy that really showed up in Game 5 was Mitch Marner. I know he's getting a lot of heat, Kirby, and I know you
We had a
have
special
ton
segment
to
on
say
that.
on him. You have a ton to say on him. But
took the entire Leafs organization and fan base, to be honest, has.
I don't have enough time left in this podcast to talk about.
I don't seem to like that level of desperation. The level of desperation the Leafs displayed in Game 5, and just the pure.
But where is it in Game 4?
But that's
my point with the Toronto core.
That's my question.
Let's give them their flowers because they showed up in Game 5. I knew they were going to show up in Game 5. I told Leafs Nation that they were, and they're probably going to come back home in Game 6 and lose. That was my prediction. I have Boston in 6. Yeah. But where is that in Game 4? And the Leafs media is still asking, where was that in Game 4?
Here's my other thing. I think Joseph Wall, number 1, played a fantastic game.
That was Toronto. The big change. They should have made that.
That was the big change, right?
Me and Cody said that's how they could beat us in a first-round matchup. Wall and Matthews going off.
There's that there's that Trent Frederick save in the 3rd period that kept Toronto in it, and then there's the Charlie Coyle stop on Charlie Coyle in overtime, and then I think like a minute and a half, 2 minutes later, Matthew Nye scores to send it to Game 6. As far as goaltending for Boston goes, I don't know why they would take their best player out of the lineup for this series. I know Marchand's been terrific, right? But last night, in Game 5, Jeremy Swayman was the best player, on both sides.
And he was spectacular. He's their present and their future, and they try to probably reportedly move on from Ullmark at the trade deadline to LA or whatever other teams.
And I think if you put Ullmark in for Game 6, I think that would be a big mistake. I think it's Jeremy Swayman's net. I think he deserves to be in. He deserves to be the starter. He has given them. It has been unbelievable what he's done for them.
And why would you go
best
back?
Goalie in the playoffs,
Nick? Why would you go back to do the goalie carousel when they did it last year in Florida in Game 6 and then in Game 7? Why would they go back to do that?
I know people like to talk about, they should have went to Swayman. Ullmark was hurt, so that seemed to be the issue there
last year.
Jeremy Swayman's last season. Jeremy Swayman's healthy, so if Jeremy Swayman, what did he stop, like 33 to 35 in Game 5?
Something like that.
And he's the only reason you were in the game. And as far as how the Boston Bruins played, said this to you, Kirby. I'm like, I saw a lot of the same mistakes in Game 5 that I saw in last year's playoffs against Florida for Boston. They couldn't complete a 5-foot pass from large portions of the game, really. They seemed very tense. They were very susceptible to the forecheck. They're turning pucks over in the defensive zone, right? And obviously, there's so many similarities that people are pointing to.
Yeah.
Game 5 overtime goal, 3-1. Both the first names were Matthews. They're both from Arizona. I get it, right? But
are you kidding me? Like that is the parallels we're drawing here.
That's the parallels that I've seen on Twitter.
How far have we fallen as a damn society? Oh my Lord!
But really, the biggest thing for me is I don't see, like, I think it was, I forget who was commentating last night, but they said when they interviewed Jim Montgomery, he's like, we learned from that last year, right? And we're going to find out in Game 6 if they truly learned. Because in Game 5, it didn't look like they learned a damn thing. Because it was the same exact thing.
Whatever coach ends up losing this series is arguably
fired.
going to be on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Loser leaves town.
If Boston loses this series, I think Jim Montgomery should be gone because, it happens once.
Inexcusable. And especially if it's...
Has that ever happened in NHL history, a coach and a team back-to-back years losing?
And he's like historic for his first 2 seasons with the team, right? Like, I think he's like the highest points percentage or something like that.
But in today's NHL, in today's culture,
that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter really.
If it's 2 first-round exits in the same fashion, there's no excuse for it.
I mean, hell,
even some big-time colleges might let a coach go.
Listen. Michigan will fire a coach if they lose to Ohio State 4 years in a row.
So that would equate to like
that
these
would
two
happen.
No.
But the thing is, with this Toronto Boston series, would y'all have believed me if I told you the most impactful guy in this series has been not Pasternak, not McAvoy, not Matthews, not Mara, not Nylander, Jake DeBrusk.
Oh, I love Jake DeBrusk. I thought you were going to say Brad Marchand. They're making Brad Marchand look like half Wayne Gretzky, half Mark Messier out there.
And then the referee tackled us behind.
Jake DeBrusk is up there, but if someone wants to say Brad Marchand, that's why I'm not scared of Boston, guys. I don't see Brad Marchand being a number 1 spotlight player in a series against us. I'll lose my ever-loving mind. I'll come on Spaces. I'll come on the podcast, say I was dead wrong. I can't believe this. And I think we'll be pretty frustrated with our
And
team.
you know
and
who
the results of Brad Marchand as the number 1 player in the
You know
series.
who's
against us.
also had a really good series, and I mentioned this a couple episodes ago when we did the playoff preview with Ryburn, and was it Matty Kirby?
Yeah, Maddie.
Yeah. And I talked about a couple different depth players that were kind of coming up and really, making a name for themselves. I think Morgan Geekie and Trent Frederick have a really good series. And
I thought Morgan Geekie was going to work for them at the beginning of the year when they brought him in.
and that's a guy me and one of our Spaces co-host Vince were talking about in the offseason. Some of those Seattle guys that
I like
or
the
geeky.
Seattle guys too. I like the Seattle guys on the back end a bit.
Yeah,
but you guys mentioned the guys up front.
But like Morgan Geekie and Trent Frederick have had really good series, and I think another point, and Kirby, you mentioned this, he seems to be healthy this year is Hampus Lindholm. I think he's really had a much better playoff.
He's been healthy, but he's been worse.
I think he's had a pretty good playoff.
I don't know. Some of the defense, some people might not think Carlos playing well. Then other times I think he is playing well.
Like
it's hard to kind of judge. Charlie McAvoy is their best guy, but it's not like he's been standing out.
Yeah,
he's cost them in games at the end of the game.
Yeah,
but
McAvoy is turning into like a pass and ending up in the box.
And there's some other guys
and on the ice on key goals against. Too.
And there's some other guys that I don't really know that well. I didn't really know coming into this season, like Wotherspoon, like Brazeau and Wotherspoon on the back end, who
Andrew Peak was kind of good for them till he got injured there. He added some toughness for them and kind of like that stuff they're going to need against us.
Again, I think Boston has played well. I just think they had a poor game 5. They really did. Like that was their
game 2. They were all right, but the Leafs took over in winning time, which the Leafs don't usually do that.
Right.
But that's when they took over with Matthews being, a star.
But the one thing I will give Leafs credit for is obviously Marchand. He's been spectacular. Pasternak's not even at a point per game in this series.
Now I'm worried about that because he does hurt us. He hurts us. I'm not going to talk much about him.
Like this guy, it's
Pasternak.
It's well documented. Pasternak.
Pasternak.
We're not going to get into this debate.
God, you Canadian person, just say it right for once.
But a shout out to one of our community members, Jack, who lives in Boston. That's going to be pretty lively if he's going to
Pasternak,
and Kirby. We talked about the Maple Leafs defense. It's been well documented. You like Ilya Lyubushkin. I haven't loved him this series. I think Joel Edmondson. He's shown some nice flashes, like
I think he's been bad. I think he's been bad.
I think he has it figured out, and then it's just falls apart, right? And then Simone Benoit, who is a guy that a lot of Maple Leafs fans like, he really has kind of been a little underwhelming for me.
Puck over glass. He had the one.
He's good as a bottom pair,
which was unlucky.
Minutes.
But again, I think he's being exposed out there. McCabe was being exposed early in the series. Then he started making better plays. And
then the decision to bench Liljegren for TJ Brody, was it, in game 4?
Liljegren, I've heard stuff about this guy. He'll go into the corner, and this is from Leafs media. He'll take the same route that Cody would just be shaking his head as a former defenseman. And the other team just goes balls to the wall, forechecks the heck out of him, and runs him right through the boards. Hey. It's like he's so soft. He doesn't read where contact is, time and space is. That's why he's out of the lineup. And Brody does the same thing.
that might be I think it was Liljegren. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Remember that goal in game 2 of the Toronto series last year, the Reinhart behind the back play?
It was him.
Okay. So yeah,
it was him and Brody, I think. Brody was out there too.
Brody was out there.
So Losterinen comes in on the forward check. Liljegren, he gets a piece of Liljegren. Remember that famous clip of Maurice saying, get a piece in the quest for the cup?
Yeah.
And it just plays like that. It's compete, right? And was it Jay Rosehill, Kirby, or Dan? I don't even... The one we played on Space.
There's so many of them. They all have the same name.
Yeah, and they were tearing into Mitch Marner and some other guys too about just a compete level, right? Because it doesn't make sense how the Leafs can come out in game 5 and do that. That was a unbelievable
game. They should be the more skilled team on paper. This is not the Boston Bruins of last year, the President's Trophy winners. They lost Taylor Hall and
Tyler Bertuzzi,
who's now on Toronto.
Orlov. Bergeron, Krejci, and I want this on the record here. I got flack in our co-host chat, namely from Kirby and Lex, that I said Labushkin sucks. And now he sucks now. And I want it on record.
No. I'm not going that far.
He sucks, Kirby.
Nope. You just said, you guys said earlier about Benoit, pushing him too far up.
Well,
the
I
line.
also think
But
Labushkin's
Benoit's been
playing
somewhat good
in
this
too
year.
much of a role. Like,
Labushkin's
Look at that.
horrible.
Labushkin hasn't give up a goal 5-on-5. Isn't that the stat, Cody?
yeah, but the penalty
Oh
kill.
my
The
god.
penalty kill.
Come
Oh,
on.
the penalty kill now. We can't get on Gustav Forsling and Ekblad being
Well,
on the ice for penalty goals allowed. But
I'm
we
not
can for other
saying
guys.
that. I'm not
saying
Oh,
that
I know.
either.
We got to bring that same energy.
But
We gotta-
Labushkin
am.
sucks.
I wanted him at the deadline. And another guy I wanted, Cody, and we don't have much time here.
Guess
but
what?
Nikita
Healthy
Zadorov.
bombed.
Nikita Zadorov.
No,
Every
no,
time I turn the TV
no.
on, that guy's putting a goal in the back of the net.
No.
If we had him on this defense, how would we be right now?
Tanev.
Kirby, he was traded
Tanev?
in November.
Yes.
He
I don't
didn't
care. I
even make
wanted
it-
him then. I
Okay,
wanted him
Okay,
then.
what about the forward that you wanted? He got healthy bombed.
Guys, let's save this for next year's trade
He's
deadline.
talking
All
about a
right.
Vegas player.
Let's
A
trade.
Vegas-
Let's save this for next year's trade deadline. Okay, come on.
What next year's trade deadline? We don't even know who the hell's gonna be available.
Don't
We're
worry
showing
about
some-
it.
We're showing some fire on here on the podcast like we do after our post-game spaces. So you guys better make sure to join us every game after on Twitter X Spaces. Get on your PC as a listener. Get on your phone if you'd like to be a speaker. We had like full house there the other night, guys. I think we had like 40, 50 plus people in the chat there after the series win. Thank you to everyone on the replay too. We have over 700 playbacks.
That's
We're getting
absolutely
close.
insane.
It's crazy. Last year we were up to, I think in the finals, they're around 1K. So again, for our preview show, and we're going to pump that out all week long here as we're waiting to see who our opponent is. So we'll keep sharing that if you haven't listened to it. And I also shared on our Instagram page, Cats and Rats Podcast. So make sure that you follow us there on Instagram. And guys, again, I want everyone to give us 5 stars if you can on Spotify and Apple. Shout out to Canadian Ryan for writing a great review for us.
Appreciate
giving
it,
us
Ryan.
a 5-star review. Ryan's our whiz when it comes to hype videos and different things that we need to have done.
If there's a guy rooting for the Leafs right now, I think he'd be it.
Yeah, just with all his buddies and friends. And we probably have more Toronto connected people within our community, but if it is Boston, we will try to get someone for our preview show. I know we've had Maddie here on the podcast and stuff like that. But yeah, if you guys ever have suggestions for us of who you'd like on for our preview show, be it on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, we could try to make contact with those people and get them on for a preview show. So again, I think we did a good job last time covering Tampa Bay without any Tampa Bay personnel as we were kind of preparing for Toronto there. But as we wrap here, gentlemen, on this momentous podcast episode, as the Panthers finally beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, anything you want to say on the way out here?
The cup run starts now.
Yeah, let's just I don't want to wait too long, so let's hurry this up. Come on, let's go finish this series up already.
Right. And the second round, I know a lot of us are going to feel very confident going into this round, you know, especially if you've been watching the Boston Toronto series, but nothing will be given out there. Panthers are going to have to earn it out there on the ice. And, you know, it's a little hard right now to not try to look ahead to like, oh, what's going on in that Carolina Rangers series, which is confirmed now for the other second round matchup, and maybe a potential matchup with the Panthers in the Eastern Conference Final. But I want to thank my co-hosts here tonight, Nick and Cody. And as we always say on the way out, let's go Cats.